Assalamu alaikum. So in this video we will be talking about one of the most important topic or one of the most important part of Arabic grammar, that is Iraab or Halaat of Arabic nouns. We usually use the words Iraab and Halaat interchangeably, but there are some differences, but here we will use it as synonyms. For simplicity you can translate the word Halaat as condition. Okay, so basically Arabic nouns and Muzaria verbs, I guess you might already know what Muzaria verbs are, have conditions upon which they are in. So Arabic nouns have conditions upon which they are in. Okay, so an i'rab of a word is indicated by how a word ends. Okay, so as you might already know that Arabic nouns basically have three endings. Okay, it can end with u sound or e sound or a sound. Okay, like for example at-talibu, at-talibi or at-taliba. Okay, so an i'rab in its original form is basically represented by these signs. Okay, so you might ask what are the importance of this halat or i'rab. So basically these halat or conditions dictate or represents the role of a word in a sentence. Okay, for example a word in a sentence can be a subject, or it can be an object, it can be a word that is coming after a preposition. Okay, so all this is basically represented by i'rab. Okay, so inshallah I will also try to explain this in my written notes. Okay, which I will be sharing in a few moments. For example, let's take a sentence in Arabic, that is darabal mudarrisu at-taliba, which basically means the teacher hit the student or the teacher beat the student. Okay, so the end letter of mudarris is the u sound, that is damma, al mudarrisu, and the sound of end letter of the word at-talib is a. Okay, like that is fatha, like at-taliba. Okay, so here in this sentence these two words al mudarris and at-talib basically represents their role in a sentence. Okay, the word al mudarris here is playing the subject or the doer of the action, that is hitting, and the student, that is at-talib, is basically an object upon which the action has been performed. So if you keep the same sentence structure exactly like this, but you just change the ending sound of these two words, like the original sentence was darabal mudarrisu at-taliba, the teacher hit the student. Now if you just switch the final harkat or vowel sign and you say darabal mudarrisa at-talibu, okay, you just switch the final sound. Now it means the student beat the teacher. Okay, same structure, same position, you just switch the vowel signs of the words. Okay, so basically a simple mistake in the sound of a final letter can totally change the meaning of the whole sentence. So this is what we learn in i'rab. So I have prepared few notes, so inshallah we will go through them. So those notes are kind of incomplete actually. The reason I did not complete is because of procrastination. Okay, there is no other reason. So if you are someone who is watching this really to learn something, so please try to have a notebook and try to copy what I am saying. Okay, and try to copy what I am saying. Okay, because there might be some things which I might not have written in my notes, or you can say on my file or PowerPoint project, anything you want to call it. Okay, assalamu alaikum. So as you can see, I basically wrote something. Okay, there can be few mistakes here, especially in case of English. Okay, English grammar, that is. So halat or i'rab, which you can simply translate it as conditions of Arabic nouns. Okay, so Arabic nouns can have three conditions upon which they are in. Okay, and those three conditions are rafa, al jar and al nasab. So the word that is basically in the condition of or in halat of rafa is called marfu, and the noun that is in halat of jar is called majroor, and the noun that is in the halat of nasab called mansub. Okay, so you also have English grammatical terms for each of these. I think marfu is in English grammatical term is called nominative case, I guess, and al majroor, I guess according to English terminology, is called genitive case, I guess, and al mansub, I guess, is called accusative case. Okay, so but English grammar is not our main concern here. So all these conditions are basically represented by how a word ends. So the original signs of rafa, nasab and jar. The original sign of rafa is a noun ending with dhamma. Okay, the original sign of nasab is a noun ending with fatha, and the original sign of jar is a noun ending with kasra. So keep in mind that these are the original conditions. Okay, inshallah I will try to go into detail in this video, because you can basically watch it as a reference point in future, but I will not go into that much detail. Okay, I will leave some of the topics for later parts. So here is an example with original signs marfu, majroor and mansub. So here is the example of marfu, ja al mudarrisu. So you can see this scene of mudarris has ended with dhamma, that is u sound. So this is marfu. Okay, as you can see I wrote sign of rafa dhamma. And majroor, sallamtu alal mudarrisi. So I said salam to the teacher. Okay, so you can see the scene of the word mudarris has ended with kasra, so this is majroor. The sign of it being jar is kasra. So you can see same word al mudarris, but here it ended with dhamma and here it ended with kasra. Now as for mansub, sa'altul mudarrisa, I asked the teacher. Okay, same word mudarris and mudarris, but here it ended with fatha. The sign of nasab here is fatha. Okay, so the original sign of rafa is dhamma, and original sign of jar is kasra, and the original sign of nasab is fatha, and the word that is in halat of rafa is called marfu, and the word that is in the halat of jar is called majroor, and the word that is in halat of nasab it is called mansub. So these are the original signs. Okay, dhamma, kasra and fatha. Okay, dhamma being sign of rafa, kasra being sign of jar, and fatha being the sign of nasab are the original signs. Okay, but there are secondary signs. So as you can see I wrote something in English. While dhamma for rafa, fatha for nasab and kasra for jar are the original signs of i'rab, there are other signs for different category of words. They are basically called secondary signs. Okay, so these are the original types of words. Okay, but there are some different categories of words which behaves totally different. So inshallah I will try to give you example of this by whatever example I can come up with. Actually I have to change my webcam position because the words I wrote are on the right side. Okay, so my camera was basically blocking the words. So there are basically different categories of Arabic nouns. Okay, so I just wrote 6 here, and we will be only discussing 5. Okay, this manqus, and there are other few we will inshallah discuss in some later videos. So these 5 are basically some of the most important or basic words you can say. So note that these category of words are basically out from the original words, like the words which we discussed here. Okay, so different category of the words apart from the original word. First is called Ghair Munsarif, and there is another term for it, Mamnoo Minas Sarf. Okay, both mean the same thing, Ghair Munsarif or Mamnoo Minas Sarf. Okay, this is a category, and there is another category, Jama, Muzzakar, Salim, which in English basically means sound masculine plural. Okay, inshallah I will also create a separate video explaining Arabic plurals. So this is your another category. Now another category, Jama, Muannas, Salim, sound feminine plural. Okay, so in Arabic you have sound masculine plural and sound feminine plural. So you might be asking what does sound means. So the thing is, there are other plurals in Arabic which are called mukassar, broken plural. Okay, so inshallah I will explain that in a separate video. So Ghair Munsarif or Mamnoo Minas Sarf, Jama Muzzakar Salim and Jama Muannas Salim. Then you have Musanna. Musanna means dual. Okay, so in Arabic apart from singular and plural you also have dual, that is called Musanna. And Al Asma Ul Khamsa, which basically means the 5 nouns. Okay, so for simplicity we will call 5 special nouns. Okay, so these are just 5 nouns, and then you have manqus, and you have another few nouns which we will not be discussing in this video, and also manqus. I actually wrote it and then I did not erase it. Okay, I could have erased it, but I left it. So the i'rab of Ghair Munsarif or Mamnoo Minas Sarf nouns. So first we will see the examples, then I will explain you the examples, and I will try to give you few details about Ghair Munsarif or Mamnoo Minas Sarf nouns. Okay, so first we will take the examples of marfu. Ja'at Fatimatu, which means Fatima came. So the word Fatima is marfu because it ended with Dhamma. So the sign of Rafa for the word Fatima is Dhamma. Now let's see Majroor. Sallamtu ala Fatimata. I gave salams to Fatima. Okay, so here you can see the change. So previously we discussed that Majroor noun is a noun which ends with kasra. So here you can see that instead of kasra, the word Fatima has ended with fatha, which we will come back. So the sign of jar is fatha, and mansub sa'altu Fatimata. Okay, I asked Fatima. So it is normal, it did not change. So the sign of nasab fatha. So the change has occurred in case of majroor. So first we will talk about what is Ghair Munsarif nouns. Okay, Ghair Munsarif nouns or Mamnoo Minas Sarf are those nouns which can't have tanween. I mistakenly wrote who, so I think the correct one will be which. So Ghair Munsarif or Mamnoo Minas Sarf are those nouns which can't have tanween and can take kasra at the end. Okay, so basically Mamnoo Minas Sarf nouns can't have tanween. Okay, so there are basically a lots of different types of Ghair Munsarif words. Okay, there are basically categories. If you just memorize those categories, inshallah you will be able to figure out what is the Ghair Munsarif and what is not, and I will inshallah try to create a separate video for it. So for this video I will just say that every single name, basically every single female name, I'm talking about names of women like Fatima, Aisha, Maryam, Zainab, are all Ghair Munsarif. Okay, they can't have tanween. Like in case of Muhammad, you will say Muhammadun, it ended with tanween, Muhammadin, Muhammadan. But in case of Fatima, you can't say, it is just Fatimatu. Okay, it can't take tanween. And foreign names, okay, they will be mostly Ghair Munsarif, like William, okay, or names of countries like Pakistan, etc. So because they can't take kasra at the end, if they are majroor, their sign of jar is represented by fatha, and apart from tanween they also can't take kasra. Okay, so a Ghair Munsarif word can't have kasra at the end. So because they can't take kasra at the end, if they are majroor, their sign of jar is represented by fatha. So because we can't give them kasra, we basically give them a complementary fatha. Okay, but there are few exceptions to this rule which we will inshallah discuss just in a moment. So if you are wondering why Ghair Munsarif words are basically behaving differently than the original ones, this I will explain you inshallah at the end of the video. Okay, after explaining you about all the categories which I gathered. Okay, now again back to the examples. Ja'at Fatimatu, Fatima came. Sallamtu ala Fatimata and Sa'altu Fatimata. The only change in Ghair Munsarif nouns with regards to I'rab will occur on majroor. Okay, marfu and mansub will remain as they originally are supposed to. Marfu will have dhamma and mansub will have fatha at the end, and majroor will also have fatha at the end because it can't take kasra, so we give it basically a complementary fatha. But there are few exceptions to this rule of Ghair Munsarif noun not taking a kasra. So these are the two exceptions. If you don't understand it right now, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's not that big of a deal, inshallah. So when you are studying it thoroughly, you will get it very easily. Okay, so the exceptions of Ghair Munsarif nouns: if the Ghair Munsarif noun is mudaf and it is majroor, then it will become munsarif and will have kasra at the end. So I am hoping that you already know mudaf and mudaf ilayhi. If you don't, inshallah I might create a separate video for it, or inshallah I will start teaching some Arabic book. In that I will explain this in detail. So for example, marartu bi masajidil madinati. Okay, so this word masajid is basically Ghair Munsarif. Okay, in its original form you can't give it a kasra, but because it is mudaf and it is majroor, we gave it a kasra. If it was not mudaf, we would have said marartu bi masajida. But here, because the exception is if the Ghair Munsarif noun is mudaf and majroor, then it will become munsarif and will have kasra at the end. Marartu bi masajidil madinati. Now the second exception, if the Ghair Munsarif noun have al, then it will also become munsarif. Okay, like sallaitu fil masajidi, I prayed in the mosques. So this is the second exception. If it does not have al and it is not mudaf, then it cannot have kasra. So in case of it being majroor, we will give it a complementary fatha, but here because the two exceptions are met, we gave it kasra because now it can become munsarif. Okay, So Munsarif basically means a word that will have kasra for simplicity. So because the exceptions are made, we have made it Munsarif. Marartu bi masajidil madinati and sallaitu fil masajidi. Otherwise, we would have said sallaitu fi masajida if it did not have al, and here we would have said marartu bi masajida. So now Iraab of Jama Muzzakar Salim, which in English means sound masculine plural. So in case of Jama Muzzakar Salim, the sign, okay, I wrote sing, let me correct it. So everything is fixed. So in case of Jama Muzakkar Salim, the sign of Rafa is waw, and the sign of both jar and nasab is represented by ya. Okay, so another mistake. Okay, again fixed, and the sign of both jar and nasab is represented by ya. So in case of Jama Muzakkar Salim, the sign of Rafa is waw, and the sign of both jar and nasab is represented by ya. Okay, for example, if a word is marfu, ja'al mudarrisuna, so you can see the waw here. So this waw basically represents rafa. Okay, Jama Muzakkar Salim or sound masculine plural is basically a plural that have its original singular form, but you just add two letters at the end like waw nun or ya nun. Okay, it is also present in English. Okay, for example, the plural of book will be books. Okay, so books is basically sound plural because it maintained its original singular form, that is book. You just added s. But in case of man, the plural of man is men. So men is basically broken plural because you change the spelling. Okay, from man you remove a and you added e. And same with mouse and mice. Okay, they did not maintain its original singular forms. Okay, so marfu, ja'al mudarrisuna, the waw represents the rafa, that is marfu. In case of majroor and mansub, both will have ya. Sallamtu alal mudarrisina and sa'altul mudarrisina. Okay, so both majroor and mansub are represented by ya. So if you are wondering how will we know if it is mansub and majroor, so then we will know it by the context of the word in which it is used. Okay, we will see, look what is before it and what is after it. Okay, it's basically simple, not that hard. Okay, so now the next part is sound feminine plural, that is Jama Muannas Salim. In case of Jama Muannas Salim, okay, I think I needed to have wrote an a here. So in case of Jama Muannas Salim, the sign of rafa is damma, which is the original sign, while the sign of both jar and nasab is represented by kasra at the end. So sound feminine plural can't have fatha at the end. Okay, it can't. So in case of nasab, we will give it a complementary kasra. Okay, so for example, marfu, ja'at al mudarrisatu, the sign of rafa damma. In case of majroor, sallamtu alal mudarrisati, sign of jar kasra. Okay, I think my camera is interfering. Let me see. Okay, I think I made few adjustment. Sa'altul mudarrisati, sign of nasab kasra. So both the sign of jar and nasab is represented by kasra at the end. So you might again ask, how will you differentiate? So this is how we will differentiate. Ala is basically preposition. The word after preposition in Arabic will be majroor. So here we will say this is majroor. Okay, we are seeing the context. And sa'altul mudarrisati, here the word mudarrisat is object of the verb sa'altu. Okay, and object in Arabic will be mansub. So this is how we will look into words. Okay, not that complicated. So the sign of rafa for sound feminine plural, that is Jama Muannas Salim, is damma, and for both jar and nasab is kasra. Now the i'rab of musanna, that is dual. So as I said that in Arabic, apart from singular and plural, you also have dual. Okay, so in case of musanna, the sign of rafa is alif, and the sign of both jar and nasab is represented by ya. So making dual is extremely simple in Arabic. Okay, so if you have any word, for example, let's take al mudarrisu, which means teacher. If you want to make it a dual, you will just add alif and noon at the end, then you basically made your dual. Okay, ja al mudarrisani, so sign of rafa is alif, but majroor and mansub both are represented by ya. For example, sallamtu alal mudarrisaini, sign of jar ya, sa'altul mudarrisaini, sign of nasab ya. So if you are getting it confused with mudarrisina, like Jama, Muzzakar, Salim, Mudarrisina and Mudarrisina. The difference is, in case of sound masculine plural, the letter before ya will have kasra, but in case of dual, the letter before ya will have fatha. So it was ina, now here it is aini. So the sign of rafa for musanna is alif, and the sign of both jar and nasab is ya. So now this is basically the final category which I wrote, that is Iraab of Asma Ul Khamsa, which you can basically translate it as 5 special nouns. Okay. So the Iraab of Asma Ul Khamsa will be normal like any other word, but if they are mudaf, then their Iraab will change, which I will explain you. In case of Asma Ul Khamsa, when they are mudaf, their sign of rafa is represented by waw, their sign of jar is represented by ya, and their sign of nasab is represented by alif. So Asma Ul Khamsa are basically abun, which means father, akhun, which means brother, hammun, which means father-in-law, fammun, which means mouth, and you have du. Okay. So abun, akhun, hammun, fammun and du. So Iraab of Asma Ul Khamsa when they are mudaf. In case of marfu, Ja'a Abu Hamidin, Hamid's father came. So because the word Abu is from Asma Ul Khamsa and it is mudaf and it is marfu, the sign of it being rafa is represented by waw. Same here with akhu, Ja'a Akhu Hamidin. Now as for majrur, Sallamtu ala Abi Hamidin, Sallamtu ala Akhi Hamidin, because it is from Asma Ul Khamsa and it is mudaf. The sign of jar is represented by ya. And as for mansub, Sa'altu Aba Hamidin, I asked father of Hamid. Sa'altu Akha Hamidin, I asked brother of Hamid. So because these are from Asma Ul Khamsa and they are mudaf, their sign of nasab is represented by alif. In any other cases, they will have normal endings. For example, if there was no Hamid, you would have just said Ja'a Abun, Ja'a Akhun, Sallamtu ala Abin, Sallamtu ala Akhin, Sa'altu Aban and Sa'altu Akhan. So now inshallah I will explain you why different categories of words act differently in case of Iraab. So if the original sign of rafa is dhamma and original sign of jar is kasra and original sign of nasab is fatha, then you might be wondering that why in Ghair Munsarif we give nasab a kasra, or in case of Jama Muannas Salim we give nasab through kasra. Okay, so the thing is, dhamma being the sign of rafa and kasra being the sign of jar and fatha being the sign of nasab are basically the original signs. Okay, you can say that it is for most words, okay, majority of the words, but there are certain words which acts differently, and we can also take examples of human behavior itself for this. For example, if I ask you what is the sign of someone being an angry, what if I ask you what is the sign of, for example, if I ask you what is the sign of someone being angry, then you might most probably say that his face will look red and he will be shouting, throwing stuff, smashing things. Okay, so you can say this is the common sign. Okay, but some people behave differently. You might see some people that while they are angry they will act normally, but they will express their anger by not eating food. Okay, so this is basically their sign. Okay, they are expressing their anger by not eating food. Okay, and you have to basically make it up to them. Okay, so this was one example of angry. You can even take example of someone being happy or sad. Okay, so everyone basically behaves differently. Okay, there are some common signs and there are some unique signs. And let's take a bigger example. Let's take for example some disease. Okay, let's take COVID for example. Okay, COVID, if I ask you what are the common signs of COVID, you will say cold, high fever, cough, etc. Okay, so these are basically the common signs, but there are other signs as well. Some people were suffering from diarrhea, I guess, and there were other symptoms. Okay, and some people didn't have any symptoms but they still had COVID. So how did we know if they had COVID or not? We basically test them. Okay, similarly in case of Iraab there are some words which are called mabni. The words which we discussed previously were mu'arab. Mu'arab basically means the words that basically accepts a change at their final letter. Okay, but there are some words which are called mabni, they don't change at all, but they will still have these three halat. For example, take the word haza. Okay, if you say jaa haza, if you say jaa haza, it means this came or this person came. Or if you say sallamtu ala haza, which basically means I gave salams to this. Or if you say ra'aytu haza, I saw this. Okay, so in first example haza was marfu, in the second example haza was majroor, and in the third example haza was mansub. Okay, so haza is basically mabni. So how do we know if it is in which halat? Then we see the context of the whole sentence. Okay, like in COVID, we test the person. If he have COVID, then we will know it. So inshallah, mabni words are very easy because they are only very few. Okay, there are basically categories. If you memorize those categories, then mabni will be over. Okay, and there are some words which act similar to mabni. Inshallah, I will also try to create a separate video for it. And one more thing, if there are any mistakes in this video, then I apologize, because I did not make this video with great preparation. Okay, because I was losing consistency, so I had to do things very quickly. Okay, so inshallah, if there are mistakes, I will correct it in future. And if you find any mistake, please comment on the video. Assalamu alaikum.